First thing you need to know if you're going to try playing this intro to Nevermore is that Allan Holdsworth had gigantic hands. And that's featured in a book he wrote called Reaching for the Uncommon Chord. It's full of these crazy finger-stretching, hand-bumbling exercises, solo transcriptions, and chords. So the third chord in particular in the intro, so this is the first one, second, but the third chord is A, D, E, F. So you're stretching with your index finger on the second string at the 6th fret, your middle finger on the 9th fret on the 3rd string, and then your ring finger on the 12th fret on the 5th string. It's a huge stretch. And you want to have all those notes ring. And even worse is when he slides it down to the 8th fret, spanning from the 3rd fret to the 8th fret. It's really hard to get these notes to ring. So I had to play it on this Les Paul because it's the shortest scale length neck that I have. And it's an electric as opposed to an acoustic electric, which Allan played on the original recording. His hands are gigantic. My hands are big. I could not pull it off on the acoustic guitar and have all the notes ring. So if you try learning this, just be forewarned, especially if you have smaller hands, work on stretching your hands. I do this, and then I stretch between each finger. And I make sure that I'm limber, flexible, my hand is loose when I'm playing this stuff. You can even hear on the original recording, Allan is quick to play these two chords, but then it goes silent and he's prepping his hand for this chord. So yeah, good luck if you try playing it. Don't worry if you can't. Start with smaller chords and then expand. Start with a chord that's a little more clustered, closer together, and then expand your hand. And then move down. You'll get there, but it takes time. Tell me what you faced in the solo, because for me, I wanted to learn this thing my whole life is how it feels. And I finally said, this is going to happen. So I don't know if you've ever felt that way about this piece or any Allan Holdsworth type thing, but go ahead.
Several, yeah. Fred was one.
Yeah.
I mean, being named after the guy and my father being a guitar player, I mean, it's ingrained in my blood. Some of my earliest memories are listening to the Tony Williams Lifetime. UK was recorded right around the time I was conceived. And when my parents still lived in Scotland, my father picked up Holdsworth and they were going to go to the pub. And he brings in a little boom box and he goes, "Hey, I got something you want to listen to." And he goes, "Oh yeah, what is it?" He goes, "This is a tape of the new IOU record." So my dad was one of the first people to actually listen to that. So, I mean, I grew up around it. I was so involved with it. And anytime he was around, I kind of had carte blanche and just hung around the guy. And so it just become a part of my blood. And Fred was one of those things of like, I want to learn how he thinks like that. And when this particular solo, I hate for this to sound bad, it wasn't too terribly difficult for me because I'm used to the way that he would approach the instrument. I looked online, including yours, that pentatonic line is one that I see that the notes are right, but that's not how he approaches it. He would use his hands and use a lot of unisons and fall down. So something like that came easy for me, but it would be a lot more difficult for somebody else to come across. But
It's
basically, go ahead.
it's funny. As soon as I knew when I was playing that pentatonic line, I'm like, this is absolutely not what he's doing.
Yeah.
But it's the way that I can get through this for right now. I had always had in mind you playing it, and I was like, okay, he's gonna do it right. But I don't know what he was doing. But once I saw your video where you're doing the typical Holdsworth stretching thing with the unison notes, I was like, oh yeah, there it is.
Yeah. I came across a lot of that, and it became ingrained in my playing. For instance, when you're playing across the B and G strings, that unison is right there, and somehow that became a part of my playing, and I think it's directly involved with him and listening to a lot of Frank Zappa. He wrote a lot like that. He wouldn't necessarily play the guitar like that, but he wrote his music in unisons all the time, and it would just throw everything up. Like, how the heck did he do that?
What's funny is when I was learning the solo, I was like, wait a minute, this is almost entirely just straight up F major. Like, it's not as complex musically as I anticipated. I was like, okay, where's the X scale? Where's all the chromaticism? But really, this opening to Nevermore is not very chromatic. He does a little bit of key transposition by a half step, but it's not very much. And so I found the solo to be surprisingly, simple by Holdsworth standards. But when I was playing it myself, I thought, oh, okay, I could see how he came into the studio and just sat down and did this. I could see why this happened. But the chords, on the other hand, I could not. I could not see how did this happen.
Yeah, that's why that man was on another plane of existence entirely. That was I shouldn't have said the solo wasn't the thing that I wanted to learn the most when I was younger. It was the chords.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to learn those chords, you're automatically struck by the beautiful melodies that are going through, and you just get lost. So I just kind of gave up on it. I learned the first couple of chords, and then I just go, eh.
Yeah, exactly.
Just admired its beauty.
Yeah. In fact, I was playing it on the piano just a few days ago, just those chords. And I'm not a piano player at all, but I just thought, okay, what do these chords look like on the piano? Obviously on the guitar they look like, like this. But what does it look like on the piano? And
they're like right there.
Yeah, the clustered notes. And it is so beautiful on the piano. I wish I would love to hear a piano interpretation of some of these beautiful Allan Holdsworth pieces. On the guitar, I feel like it was his way of expressing, but I felt like I could see why he got so frustrated with the instrument. Like he couldn't convey what he wanted to do. I saw him live shortly before he died, and he was up on the stage saying, "Oh yeah, that's Allan Holdsworth on the banjo, screwing it up, all night long for you." But I could see his frustration with the instrument. I know that a lot of people know that about him. But when I played through this on the piano versus the guitar, the piano is just so much more beautiful. What he did on the guitar was incredible, but the way the chords play out and sound when when you can use a pedal and allow some of these overtones, just unbelievably beautiful. Did you try any of those left hand chords that I notated?
Yeah, I did. As soon as you sent it to me, as a matter of fact, I was sitting on my couch, and next to my couch, I usually keep a couple of guitars in different tunings, and I just happened to have one in standard, and I picked it up, and it's that first real stretch. It's like, oh boy, man! Like even some of his later stuff, where he starts to get more, um, let's just say, broad. He would use anything. His paintbrush was so huge. Those would get funky, but some of these particular chords were pretty early on in the way that he wrote that kind of stuff, and it's like, whoa. No wonder he did that when he was younger.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, my hands hurt for probably a couple of days, just the tendons, in my hands, because I'm not used to playing like that. And when I was trying to figure out the chords, I wrote out what I thought I heard, and it was somewhat incorrect. And Gabe Riccio, the guy who helped with or who did the transcription books for the King Crimson albums, he listened and he's like, no, I think it's this. And then I was able to take my stuff and his stuff and come together. And I think it's right. And it's really, really hard to hear when you're listening in headphones, like slow motion, whatever it is, 50% speed, full speed. It is extraordinarily difficult. You can tell the acoustic guitar he was playing didn't have a big body. It's a thin line acoustic or something like that. Very easily playable. However, just not a tone monster, And so I'm listening to this guitar and it's like, okay, what am I hearing, an A or an A flat? And sure enough, it's both, because of this,
That's the truth.
But yeah, it was. Those chords eluded me for so many years. Did you ever try picking them out yourself? I know you said you spent a little bit of time, but did you ever really sit and listen and try to do it?
On other songs, yes. On Nevermore, no. And that's actually what I was talking about briefly. Is I've spent, in between recording sessions, if I'm in the studio a long period of time, or just need a break, I work on MIDI files and try to transcribe all this in MIDI files. And I have quite a collection. Some of it's finished, some of it not so much, because again, it's that same thing. But I will have to say, with Holdsworth's playing, is it's not just the notes themselves, and that was the most difficult part of trying to even put my spin on this solo, is the ebb and flow. It's not just a series of notes. The runs and scales in have a certain velocity that goes in and out, and I just try to do a little bit of justice and not just making it seem like a series of notes going from A to B, but to have it feel and mean something, which is part of his guitar playing that probably meant the most to me.
Yeah, in fact, when I was recording my own incorrect version of the solo, I would find that I'd play some of the melody a little early, and it was like, oh, that does not fit the chord. And when you're listening, it just sounds like this very free-flowing kind of, okay, he's just playing this solo over these chords as a backdrop. But no, it's like, it is extremely musical, and you can hear, after playing and after really listening, I'm like, oh, I get it. I get why these notes work in these chords. But I did not, before doing the transcription and before actually trying to play it. So when I recorded it, I was like, oh, this part of the solo needs to be over that chord. It's not as arbitrary as I thought it would be, because listening, there's clearly no tempo. There's, none of that. It's just a solo over some chords. But it is a solo with the chords, not over the chords. So that was really cool to realize as I was playing through it.
Me too. When I was trying to wing it through some of those passages, I'm like, this ain't right.
Awesome. Well, Allan, you did a great job on the video. Thank you so much for contributing, and I'm glad we finally got to do stuff together. I guess no one would know this, but you and I have been interacting via YouTube since 2008 or something.
Close, close to 15 years.
Yeah.
It was you and Laurie Monk from Truth and Shredding that I just put the Presto and Vivace thing out, not knowing anything. That was one thing I wanted to learn since I was a little child, and it took me a couple days. I posted it, and here we are, almost 15 years later.
Yeah. And then I posted it and I was doing 4 notes per string, thinking more like a violinist. And you're like, oh, that's cool. That's how you did it. But then I actually just last week updated my Presto Vivace, listening note for note, because my tools are better now than they used to be, and my ears are better. And I think I have it note for note accurate. So maybe you and I should do something with that too. But it's too fast. I tried playing along. I'm an old man now on the guitar. I can't play along.
That's the thing. And you know what? Unless you knew Holdsworth was there, you'd never hear it because he's mixed so low.
Right.
And we're recording, and my dad was always like, "No, he's there. He's there. I saw him do it live, and he looked bored because it was all just so structured." You're kidding me. So yeah, I started it, and I went, "Oh, what's so beautiful?" And my natural talent is drums and rhythm. For some odd reason, that just makes sense. It's those fives in there, those 5, 7s, and 9s that
Yep.
pop up. That just, they make my heart melt. I love stuff like that.